Welcome back to the Red Zone, mini episode number 1. I don't know if I'm going to number these or if I'm just going to sort of keep this as an option, but maybe not number them because it's not part of a series. I don't know. But this is the first mini episode. Got to this week's stories a bit late. Very busy with school and work and stuff kicking on. So that's why I'm getting to this a little bit late. Didn't think it'd be really necessary to do a full hour-long episode when I'm getting to it this late. But it's still a lot of stuff that I haven't gotten to talk about that was very big. And stuff that I regret that it took me this long to get to. Primarily the Bengals and Chiefs last week in the AFC Championship game. That's what I've really been thinking about this whole week in terms of wanting to talk about. I've got a few more things, but as we all know, this was the more exciting of the two championship games, and it started off not necessarily looking like it was going to be an incredibly good game. Very, very struggling, very, very much two struggling offenses going at each other. When the Chiefs broke through with 4 minutes left in the first half, you really sort of thought, okay, maybe this is just the Chiefs' year. Maybe they'll just pull away. They're not killing them, but it looks like it's going to get easy. Then Bengals go on a 2-minute, 90-yard drive that they cannot get a touchdown on, which would have been huge. But they get a field goal, ended at 13-6. And that was really the less interesting half by far. Pretty much all of the primary storylines are going to be coming in the second half, which is why I went through that so quick. Going through the first half, though, because there were some interesting storylines that started to unfold. The Bengals O-line was getting obliterated. They gave up 3 sacks in the first 8 minutes, 4 sacks in the first half. They were getting crushed. They had no chance. Burrow was getting pressured every single drop back. So it was it was very much a rough start for Cincinnati, and KC wasn't cruising, but it looked a lot easier for them. From the outset, KC controlled the game. They looked like the more comfortable team. They looked like the more prepared team. And they cruised into half. They get to that half 13-6. They've got 4 sacks. Their offense looks more comfortable. They had a couple... Actually, this is something that isn't incredibly important to the flow of the game. Actually ended up just being pretty much irrelevant. But the Chiefs drew up 2 really, really interesting rugby lateral plays where Kelsey was flipping the ball outside to a wide receiver who was underlapping and running towards the pylon. And they would have had about 10 to 15 yards easily extra both times. But it is a bit of a weird play. It's not a motion that I would assume Travis Kelce is used to doing in terms of football. Like a backwards pitch that you would be doing out of shotgun if you're a quarterback, essentially. Or when you're under the center, not out of shotgun. So a bit of a weird play. I like the ingenuity. I think it's interesting. I think there's obviously potential with this style of rugby laterals where you've got it organized and you've got one option pre-allocated if you really trust your players. And Andy Reid can't help himself in that regard. He really loves to go for these like creative, cute plays that I don't even want to say they don't work a lot of the time, but like he's fine with the times that they don't work for the insane like momentum and confidence and sort of inevitability that those successful plays in the red zone that they run like that really give. And they make you think, oh, this team's special. This team's on another level. They're doing things that we can't even think of, can't even dream of. And they're very unique in that regard. They've had a lot of those plays over the past few years. All the shovel passes with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, Statue of Liberties, etc., that they've run in the end zone to get really creative. And it seems like these shovel passes or these laterals downfield are going to be the next sort of wrinkle that people are going to have to look out for the Chiefs. And I really think they could get some big yards and some important moments if they continue to look for the opportunities to do that, which I really love. But hey, let's move on to the second half. The second half was more important. That was just something that I thought was interesting. I think it's something to look out for in the future. But after Cincinnati failed to get the touchdown before the half, it's 13-6. And T. Higgins gets a great touchdown from Joe Burrow at the end of a 62-yard drive. And the Bengals are starting to look better. The Bengals are now like, hey, it's a tie game. It's 13-13. The Bengals have done this to the Chiefs before. Chiefs are starting to get worried. And they go on a huge drive, 11 plays, 77 yards, ends with a Marquez Valdez-Scantling touchdown that really shouldn't have been. Mike Hilton got burnt like a piece of toast on this route. He was almost 10 yards off of MVS after he broke, and only a throw that was quite a bit behind him and made him stop was the only reason it was close. It actually was probably one of Patrick Mahomes' weaker throws on the day, because if he leads him, it's just an easy walking touchdown for Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But it still works. He got it there. And Mike Hilton was not able to get his hand there in time, and it was a touchdown. And that was huge for the Chiefs, because even a field goal there, and you get back to the Bengals with a chance for them to go back and take the lead, that's scary, because the Bengals never had a lead in this game. The Bengals were never in control in this game. They never had the chance to take a lead without going for two. So, past the second quarter, I mean. So this was a huge drive, a huge touchdown. Part of the reason that it felt like, hey, this is a great performance from Mahomes, because every time they just needed something, he was able to give it to him. And it wasn't a perfect play, but he got it all the way down there, then made the throw they needed. Now, the rest of the game is once again, it still looks like the Bengals are probably going to come back and win. They get stopped, but then Mahomes loses the ball next drive. Hubbard recovers it, and they go on a 45-yard drive, the Bengals, and they score a touchdown. And now it's 20-20 with 13 and a half minutes left in the game. And it's like, yep, the Bengals are just going to do this. They've just got all the momentum. They've had the better of the chances in the second half. This is looking like, hey, looks like the Bengals are going to go get this. And what happened in the final 5 minutes or so can only be described as tragic for the Bengals. This stretch of minutes, the last 6 to 8 minutes of the game, were the only time at any point that the Chiefs were, or that the Bengals supposedly had were favored to win the game, according to ESPN's FPI. That's it. And they just really lost the plot. Overall, I'll take, before I get into the ending sequence, which I think is going to take the most of this part, I want to talk about Burrow versus Mahomes. Burrow was not at the level of Mahomes, and in general, I think Mahomes is a comfortably better quarterback. Burrow is great, though. Burrow is a great quarterback who, in their head-to-head matchups, has normally outperformed Mahomes. So there was an expectation that, hey, could this happen again? This has become the norm. Will we see it? And I think this was the first time that Mahomes outright got the better of Burrow in their head-to-head. He just, I think from the very beginning, you could tell that the lack of protection, those 3 sacks in the first 7 minutes, 4 sacks in the first half, I think you could tell that was affecting him. His confidence wasn't there. He didn't really look like he was looking to make huge plays until late in the game when he sort of got comfortable. And even then, when he did, he got a bit unlucky. He had that interception that was tipped on a really good throw to T. Higgins, really. Even though it was double covered, it was inches away from being a huge completion. So yeah, even in his comfortable moments, it wasn't there. And for Mahomes, he had some poor throws. He had that fumble, but he made a ton of big plays. He made a ton of great throws. He was like his usual self at like 90 to 95%, which I said, I was like, hey, if they can win, if they get that from Mahomes, and they did. They got a great performance. His final stats, 29 of 43, 326, 2 touchdowns. A very, very good outing for Mahomes. And his first time that he could really put it on his his resume, that he outdueled Burrow, who has been sort of labeled as his like biggest rival at the moment, and the Bengals, who have become the Chiefs' biggest rival lately in terms of competing. So it was a huge win for Mahomes and the Chiefs. But let's get into how they got it, because obviously we haven't even talked about the conclusion of this game, which is the craziest part. The Bengals started getting some pressure on Mahomes late, which had not been happening throughout the game, but the later it got, the more pressure they got, they were able to hold the Chiefs off the board. And so, with just a couple minutes left in the game, they were able to get the ball back with 2:30 left on the clock. They get nothing. They get less than nothing. They get or there's an intentional grounding. They get 3 yards on first down. So this adds up to a 3rd and 16. With 1:03 on the clock, the Bengals make an enormous mistake. They snap the ball with 16 seconds left on the clock in a situation where you were almost certainly not going to keep the ball. They gave up a chance to run the clock out even more, which is crazy. But next, they get it. Somehow they get it. So they make this huge mistake, but they get it. And yet, the next 2 plays, they get 2 yards in 8 seconds. They run nothing off the clock. Then on 3rd and 8, they get sacked. After converting that 3rd and 16, that was their highest percentage chance to win the game at any point. They were given a 64% chance to win after they converted that. There should be no way you lose that game in regulation at that point. It just shouldn't happen. You can't lose that game in regulation at that once you get that first down. You just can't. You just can't. And so they get stopped. They get sacked. They punt it. It's a terrible punt, because of course it is. Their punter was woeful all day. I don't even want to talk about it. He was so much worse than a non-factor, because every single time he went out there, you knew some new way he was going to botch the punt and give them a few extra yards that they shouldn't have. He does it again. Line drive, gives them a chance to return it. It's ridiculous. So the Chiefs then get the ball, and you can guess what happens next. They drive down. They get close, but wait. The Bengals slow them down. It's 3rd and 4. It's 3rd and 4 at Cincinnati's 47. In these conditions, they're not going to be able to kick a field goal. They're probably not that close. They probably need another 10 or so to get into the position where Butker, you're really starting to worry about him making a field goal. Because it's cold, it's windy, and you're talking about kicking a 64-yard field goal from right here. But on 3rd and 4 with 17 seconds left, Mahomes runs out of bounds and gets 5 yards. So now there are 12 seconds left, and they have one more play max before they would have to kick a field goal. And they still have to get at least 5 more yards. They're probably hoping for 10 in one play. And they have to go out of bounds. But wait. My guy, Joseph Osai, who had been great all day, been getting pressure on. Remember how I had talked about the Bengals starting to get pressure on Mahomes? That was almost all Osai. and in the most crucial moment of the game, for some unbelievable reason, he pushes Mahomes late, gives him the 15 yards, and gives him the field goal to win the game 23-20. And that was it. That was the Bengals season. They lost it all like that. At the end of that incredibly close game that they had managed to stay in because they had run the clock off enough, except they gave them 15 free yards at the end that they couldn't afford to. And Butker knocked it through, and the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. And they deserved it. They were the better team. They were the more disciplined team. They were the number one seed. I think it's hard to deny that the Chiefs are a deserving Super Bowl contestant. And Mahomes is going there for his third time. He's 1-1 as of now. He's not going to be even anymore after this. We'll see what happens. I think it could go either way. But it's a tough one for Cincy to swallow for sure. Super Bowl loss that they could have won last year. AFC Championship game that they could have won this year. And they probably would have been the much closer to being on even footing with their opponent in terms of perception going into this year's Super Bowl compared to last. As good as the Eagles are, the Bengals have had a great finish to the year. They were one of the best teams in football for the second half of the season. So very tough way for them to lose. And you got to wonder, it's just so hard to be a coach probably, right? Because, what do you say to Osai after he made huge play after huge play to put pressure on Mahomes to keep you in the game, and then he does that, and it's an objectively terrible thing that you cannot afford, but he's a human, and he's just so broken up about it, and you can tell he knows, and he knew the second it happened. So what are you going to tell him? Just so tough. I really feel bad for Osai. I feel bad for the Bengals. Just a really tough situation. Feel bad for Zach Taylor, because I think he actually did do a very good job this season, which I would have been a bit reluctant to say prior. But I think he's got an idea of what they need to be, and I think he's driven them even closer this year. Their O-line. I know the injuries, but man, they have to get a good O-line. They just have to somehow. But yeah, just wasn't the year for the Bengals, and the Chiefs advance. So now on to the much, much, much less exciting championship game, Eagles-Niners, And this is not one that I'm dying to talk about, but we're going to talk about it because we have to. This was sort of like, in my eyes, I saw this as like a clash of the Titans coming in. I was so excited for this game, right? This was probably my most anticipated playoff matchup, period. I can't lie. I called this like 6 or 7 weeks ago, and I'd been saying it every week since, that this was going to be the NFC Championship game. These were the two most well-rounded teams in the NFL. They were good at everything. And it started off super, very super intense. You get the Niners holding the Eagles to a third down and long instantly. Then on that third down, you get Hurts. He scrambles out, lobs it over the defense, gets it to Devontae Smith, who makes the one-handed grab on the sideline. Beautiful, unbelievable play to set up the touchdown for the Eagles, and you're like, oh, this is going to be it. This is intense. And then both teams show how strong their defenses are. They get the stops. They go back-to-back. But in the midst of that, the thing that really changed this game was the first Eagles strip sack that they got on the 49ers' first drive that kind of really just ended the game. Brock Purdy tore a ligament in his arm when he was strip sacked in the first quarter, lost the ball, Eagles get it, and he's out for the game. Or he actually didn't end up being out for the game, but he should have been. And now he's out for several months this offseason. He could not throw the ball, so practically he was out. He was a traffic cone at quarterback when he did come back in. Was a real shame. It kind of, ended the game in your eyes, because the 49ers, not only were they losing their best quarterback of the season, their starting quarterback, they were already down 2 quarterbacks. Now they're down 3. They're down to their 4th string quarterback, not their second. So they were just totally screwed. Josh Johnson is just miserably, miserably bad. He's just not a good quarterback at all. He's not. He's not good. I don't want to dwell on Josh Johnson too bad. I don't just want to dunk on him for no reason, but he's not a good quarterback. He proved that in the game. Although, it's a tough situation to ask him and go out there against the number 1 pass defense in the NFL out of nowhere in the middle of the playoffs. So I'll cut him a little bit of slack there. But the next drive, Reddick almost gets another strip sack on Josh Johnson that they don't call back. And it's just over from this point. The Eagles pile on. The Eagles dominate the 49ers. Was not a particularly close game. 31-7, the Eagles ended up winning. Who cares about the ending? Because I don't want to go through the box score and the game cast of a game that didn't matter after the second quarter. But Christian McCaffrey really impressed me. I will say that. He had 15 carries for 84 yards. He had 4 catches for 22 yards. So over 100 total yards in this type game is actually really impressive. He earned every one of those yards. He was getting crushed by these Eagles defenders, and he was doing a great job of handling it. Really impressed me, actually, because obviously I know McCaffrey's skilled. I know he's one of the most talented running backs in the league, but he really showed how he's one of the toughest running backs in the league, I think, Sunday. And that's something that you can't take pride in it, because obviously you're not happy about it, but you got to be impressed by it, how hard McCaffrey was running even into the second half of a game that was not close, because, man, that Eagles defense was punishing. What really killed the game, though, because I will give credit to the Niners, they kept this close for a bit. They really did. This was a game that for a while was quite close, but what really put the dagger through the Niners' hearts, 7-7 with 2 minutes left in the game. Then they allow the Eagles to score twice in the final minute and a half to go up 21-7 at the half. And with as little offensive threat as the Niners had, that was the game, really. That was it. That was their chance to make this competitive, to win. So you really felt for them after that, but that was the game. You knew it was over after that for sure. Jalen Hurts didn't have his best day, only 129 passing, and then 40 rushing, 160 total yards. He didn't need to be amazing, though. They were controlling the game after the second quarter. But, you would hope whenever they play the Chiefs, you'd hope Hurts has a better game than this, because I don't know if they'll be able to get by with this type game from Hurts against the Chiefs when Mahomes looked like he did against the Bengals. I wish we could have seen this at full strength. I've said it already, but this is a matchup I was so excited for all season, and then Purdy just getting hurt is just, first drive, so tough. It's not something you want to see. Really, really wanted to see how this game would have gone. I think the Eagles still would have won, but I think it could have been a great, great matchup, and instead we got this, which was not nearly as exciting. I don't really think it's what anybody wanted in terms of this matchup. Whew! The New Orleans Pelicans. Oh my God, where do I even start with these guys? My Pelicans lost 10 in a row over the last 3 weeks. They were on a 10-game losing streak. They had gone from a team that was fighting for the 1 seed for the vast majority of the season into a team that was below 500 and fighting for a play-in spot. And still are, to be clear. They are 500 now, but they are still fighting for a play-in spot. That is what we are at, where we're at right now. We are competing to make it to the playoffs again, which is not where I think anybody thought we would be after the first quarter of the season, but it is where we are. And we've got to realistically evaluate that as a team, and the guys have got to be able to mentally adjust to those new surroundings that we find, the new teams we're competing with, the new teams we need to be beating, and we've got to figure out how to keep grinding out wins like we have the last two. Now, this losing streak was very ugly. We were losing to some very, very mediocre teams, like some incredibly mediocre basketball teams. One of our easiest stretches of the entire season, and we were losing every one of them. God, just what a rough stretch it was. But the last two games, they've started to bring it back. The Pelicans are on a 2-game winning streak right now with the win over the Lakers and Kings in the last two. And that's very promising. Those are two teams that are, Lakers are probably going to end up being a play-in team. Kings are going to end up being a top 4 seed. So that's a huge, huge set of wins that you needed against some big Western rivals. And you know, you might think, oh, well, Brandon Ingram returning has been the biggest change in this, and it has been a factor. He was great against the Lakers. In fact, let's give him his due. Brandon Ingram against the Lakers shot 28 times. God, I love seeing that number. I love seeing Brandon Ingram shoot that much. God, I wish he would shoot that much every game. But Brandon Ingram put up 35, 5, and 4 in just an incredible effort to outduel Anthony Davis and LeBron James and get the win over the Lakers. What an unbelievable performance from him. What a player. God, I love Brandon Ingram when he does his thing. And God, I wish he would take 28 shots more. Man, I wish he would take that amount of shots often. I love seeing that number next to his name. I'm so okay with losing games where Brandon Ingram takes a ton of shots. That's not a problem for me. I'm so fine with that. So I just wish it would happen more often. But with that said, Brandon Ingram played well against the Lakers. He was out against the Kings. Perhaps the biggest X factor in these last two games has been Trey Murphy getting back to his early season form where he was really hot. Right, the last two games against the Lakers, he was 21-5. 21 points, 5 rebounds. Against the Kings, 30 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. 2 great games back-to-back, which you love to see from Murphy. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out on. Trey Murphy is a huge X factor for this team. He's a young wing who's very raw, but has shown he has great scoring talent. Not just from shooting the ball outside, but he's got the length, the size, the aggression, this finishing package to cut inside and score at the basket. He has got to be assertive and consistent for us to continue performing without Zion, because he is a really good talent, but he has not shown an ability to consistently perform. And he's a big part of how consistent we can be until Zion gets back. Now, Zion is going to be getting checked, reevaluated very soon. There are some people who are expecting him to be back after the All-Star break. I know I am hoping that will be the case. I don't want to get too overconfident in terms of that, but that is kind of what I'm expecting at the moment. I think the Pelicans really need that. We need to go on a run where we are fully healthy and get some wins. We need it so bad. We should not be 500. This team's way too good to be 500. But you know, we can't rush it. We just gotta hope that Zion is fully healthy sooner rather than later, and we can get him back soon and rack up some wins once we're fully healthy. Now, Brandon Ingram isn't even fully back yet. He's still not playing the second end of back-to-backs as he continues to get to full health. And he's not even back in form totally. That Lakers game was incredible, but aside from that, he's been quite mediocre, and he's missed a few games still. So we're in a very weird spot with Brandon Ingram's return to the starting lineup. Obviously, it's great to have him back. Obviously, he is still a great player, but he's not in classic Brandon Ingram form yet, and we've still got a couple wins, which makes me very optimistic for our ability to turn the season around and start making some progress even before Zion gets back. But for now, that is going to be this bite-sized mini episode of the Red Zone wrapped up. I'm going to be back later this week with episode 11, but until then, hope you enjoyed the episode. Like and subscribe, follow the podcast on all platforms. Until next time, I will see you later. Peace.